It wasn't fun going against me. You might hit me and knock me down and take me out, but you know that fly you can't catch and it just keeps biting you and it's like death by 1,000 cuts. That's how I played football. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the strongest. Wasn't the smartest. But I knew that I was going to take you into the deep waters.
Yeah,
and we were going to figure out who wanted it more.
Welcome to the Matthews Mentality Podcast. In this episode, we are joined by a true force in football. Justin Pugh. Justin Pugh. Not only is he a powerhouse on the field, but he's also a leader with an inspiring story that extends beyond the gridiron. From earning all Big East Conference honors in college to being a first-round pick in the NFL draft, Justin's journey is a testament to dedication, resilience, and leadership. And the twist that makes this episode even more intriguing, this is how we met, was Justin not only dominates in the football arena, but also ventured in the world of real estate investing. That's how you and I first connected. So today we'll be diving into highs, challenges, mindset, everything that's propelled him through every chapter of his career, both on and off the field, as well as in real estate. So whether you're a football enthusiast or a budding entrepreneur, real estate investor, this episode provides insight that transcends the boundaries of playing on the field. So without further ado, let's kick off another episode of the podcast with the incomparable, I could tell Leanne wrote this, incomparable Justin Pugh. Justin, welcome to the show.
She threw some hard words in there early on.
Know.
We're getting warmed up.
I'm not at your level, but as an ex-football player, I mean, these big words, it's hard for me. You know?
They're hard for anybody. I think when she was writing, I guarantee she had to spell check how to spell.
Yeah, she had to Google what does this mean. But what's new? What's going on in the life of Justin today? If I may, you just had your first kid 2 weeks ago. Congratulations.
Yeah, I just had my first daughter, first child, 2.5 weeks ago.
That rocks you.
We're running on no sleep, caffeine. You know, I'm just crushing cups of coffee every morning. Just finished the season, so I was tired from the season, and then we went right into the hospital, and my daughter had to stay an extra few days. She had a little reflux issue, nothing major.
But she's doing all right?
She's doing great.
How's mom doing?
Home. She's doing great.
Cool.
So I thought I was sore from the season.
Nah.
I might be more sore from sleeping on a couch at the hospital for the last week.
Yeah, it's a game changer on so many levels, and I very much want to spend time talking about just your first 2 weeks there in terms of the mental, beating that it takes versus the physical. But let me ask you a question. Did you time... This is a personal question. You don't have to answer. Did you time the birth around the football season?
We did not. I thought I was going to retire. Last year, I tore my ACL 2 years ago. And going into that off season, we had just gotten married and we went on our honeymoon. I'm like, I'm done playing. My weight was down to 258. And in football, most offensive linemen are 300 pounds plus.
Yes.
So I'm in retirement thinking it's all said and done. I'm not recovered from the knee yet. And teams started calling during training camp. So my daughter was planned to be done with football. And then my wife's like, wouldn't it be great if you could go sign with a team? And if they made the Super Bowl, we could have her on the field. And then I signed with the Giants. They were 1-5 at the time. So any chances of going to the Super Bowl were probably out the window there.
Yeah, it would be a great photo op. So again, we're here to talk about you, but it's relevant. So me and my 4 siblings, because my dad played my whole life in the NFL, were all born between the months of January and May, and so they would time to the best of their abilities, and obviously they were blessed to not have challenges with getting pregnant, but they were timed to all be off-season babies. So me and my brothers and sister are all off-season babies. And another step, my uncle Bruce Matthews, offensive lineman, 7 children, all born between January to July, all off-season babies. So I don't know if that's a thing in the NFL.
It must have been part of like the OTA schedule. It's like, all right, we got OTAs, phase 1, phase 2, baby phase.
Well, look, back in the day, I mean, my dad, he played 78 to 96, and my uncle, I want to say...
Which is insane.
Yeah, it is. It's just, they're different. They're built different, right? And my uncle was 81 to 2001. The season would end, depending on playoffs, but let's just say regular season would end in January. You were done till August. You had one little camp in April for a week or two, but other than that, when you say off season, it really was like I had a stay-at-home dad 6-7 months out of the year. Nowadays, and we'll talk about your experience in the NFL, but it's much more a full year-round job and commitment. Certainly, there's an intensity to the season and training camp, candidly. but it's evolved. I think it has to do with, it's just, there's so much more money involved, right? There's a lot more on the table.
Now, did your dad do anything in the off seasons? I know guys, you look at Roger Staubach and when he was in Dallas.
No.
And that was even before them.
Yeah,
I know that's how he kind of got started with the football.
Yeah, he crushed in real estate.
Yeah.
He created Staubach Retail Services, I think, or Staubach Retail Real Estate Partners, which he then eventually, I want to say, sold to JLL in 2006 for, I think, $660 million. So probably more money than he made as a quarterback
100%
of America's team, even inflation adjusted dollars. But he did great. My dad did. He did real estate. He would do, a little apartment building, a little development. And so that's, in my opinion, where I got my love of real estate, was kind of just seeing that. And so he stayed busy. But look, 5 kids, as you're finding out with your first kid, it takes a lot. It's a big commitment. There's a lot of time. So he didn't have a ton of time in the off season just because he was helping my mom keep us alive, and
priority number one really had
exactly.
to take precedent.
So what is all right? So it's the off season, and let's put the previous 2 weeks aside. Talk to me about what a typical day would look like for you if you were, especially in the meat of your career, you were saying, okay, I'm going to be playing next year. Like what does an off season look like for you or for any player nowadays? It's very different than what I saw.
As soon as the season ends, there's not much time off because, as you know, recovery isn't just sitting on the couch and putting your feet up and relaxing. You take a vacation, you go somewhere with your wife, your girlfriend, and then you're right back into the active recovery. And there's different training blocks that guys get into. But really, as the season ends, you go into your exit meetings, and the coach is going to tell you everything you need to do better, what you didn't do well this year, what you need to improve on, no matter who you are, from Patrick Mahomes all the way down to the 53rd guy on the roster.
How candid or raw are some of those meetings?
Depends on the coach.
Because I will say, as a football player of the Cardinals or the Giants or whatever team you're on, you are an employee, right? So I don't know how the NFL gets around this, but the way, and again, it's the culture of football. I would argue you and I have no problem with it, but in the real world, if a manager in a supervising role spoke to an employee the way a coach will speak to you, who is effectively your manager, it's all types of employment issues there, right? Hostile work environment is what I call it. But again, football, I think everybody understands culturally is very much an outlier. How direct, how aggressive would they get with you in an exit interview and tell you, hey, you're not perfect. Here's where you need to get better.
Yeah, it's a cover your ass business. And coaches they're worrying about number one. As much as coaches tell you that they care about their players, it is a business first. And coaches, if you're really, really good, you change jobs every 3 years and work your way up the ladder until you land where you want. And then as soon as you get that dream job, it's just a matter of time until they fire you. Look at Bill Belichick. Even he had his day where him and the Patriots had to part ways. He wasn't fired, but he's like on the Mount Rushmore, and he even had to leave his dream job. And the fact that they have to look out for themselves first means that the players are a stepping stool for the coaches to get and maintain their position. So if a coach isn't direct and telling you exactly what you do and need to get better at, he's going to lose his job. So you have to understand where the coaches are coming from, and you have to understand where the player's position. And mine is try to maximize as many dollars as possible in any given season. So sometimes those two things don't always mesh. What a coach thinks is right and what a player thinks is right.
Yeah, especially because in any sport, especially football, because it is a physical sport, unlike candidly any other, maybe boxing, I don't know. But you have a shelf life, and your peak earning years are probably 26 to 32.
Just turned 33, so I know I'm on that. As soon as you take less money, you're never going back up.
Yeah, you're never going back up.
Once they know you'll play for less, they got you.
And so while in a business and real estate, I think there's a statistic somewhere in, let's call it corporate America, whatever that means. Like your peak earning years are your mid 50s, right? And so it's very different. And so you guys, you have this clock, this urgency where it's like, I need to take as much off the table as quickly off the table, and to my side, and so, all right. So you have these exit interviews. Any interesting moments or stories that you experienced in an exit interview?
I can tell you a coach that was honestly the most honest take of my game. I'm getting ready to leave the Giants. I thought I was going to re-sign with the Giants. I was a first-round pick. I played there for 5 years, started every game, and I think I'm going to get, one of the highest guard contracts in the NFL at the time. And I had an injury midway through my 5th year, a back injury. And as an offensive lineman with a back injury, red flags go up. Teams start to get a little nervous. And my offensive line coach came to me and he said, hey, I would go to a contender, at the time it was the Patriots were the team winning it every year. It's like, hey, go to the Patriots, play with Tom Brady, take less money. He's like, I don't think you're good enough to go to a team and get a big contract, get a top guard contract on a winning team. He's like, you could either go to the Patriots, take a mid-level contract and have that be your contract year, or go to one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they'll probably pay you, but you're going to be on a losing team. And I took offense to it, as anyone probably would. Sure. But looking back, he was dead on.
Really? He
was dead on. And I ended up signing with the Cardinals, who were at the time had the worst record in the NFL.
They paid you the money.
They paid me. And I looked at it more as a business decision, whereas like, hey, I can guarantee me these dollars right now. If I never play another snap of football, I know I have this. And for me, that was more valuable for security for myself, for my family, than, betting on myself another year, especially coming off the injury.
And God forbid if you had suffered an actual career-ending injury during those first couple of years after this decision's made, if you're at the Patriots taking less money to kind of have a better experience and maybe put yourself in a position to improve your game more so, you would have regretted that. Versus if that same injury happened with the Cardinals, it's like, well, at least I have this nest egg because I made the decision to go to a worse team. So, okay, you have X interviews, you start training in the NFL. Would you just, and speak for yourself, but also what you saw, would guys stay at the facilities and look to kind of hang around the hoop? Or I know my brother, he played for the Packers, but as soon as the offseason was done, he would go out to L.A., he had a house in L.A., and would train at Proactive or
I think it depends on where you're playing. And if you live in Cincinnati or Green Bay or Chicago, and the winter months roll around and you can't leave your house.
Especially a lot of those guys, especially if you're a pretty boy with long blonde hair from USC,
But even Dave Bakhtiari, who's another California kid, and he's in Green Bay. All those guys get out of those areas.
Dave's in Nashville now.
Yeah, they're finding other locations. Arizona's one of them.
The whole Bakhtiari clan.
Yeah, I mean, the Sunbelt states, the same reason everyone loves multifamily and industrial there now is probably the same reason the NFL guys typically live
Nashville's
in most of
a big
places.
Town. Obviously, LA is big. New York, but so
I stayed in New York when I was there. I love New York. I love what it brought off the field for me. So I kind of stayed right there. My family's from Philadelphia. I was close to home. And then when I moved to Arizona, I realized, wow, okay, quality of life in the off season is something to behold. So I stayed there. But what happens in the NFL is places like Proactive or Exos. I train in a place specifically for offensive linemen. So it's niche training, O-line only. It's almost a fraternity started by LaCharles Bentley. And LaCharles was an all-pro, and he started it, and now C.J. Davis runs it with some other folks, and it's just for offensive linemen, and we are all surrounding each other every day.
And this is all in New York?
This is here in Arizona.
Oh, this is here in Arizona.
So
I got you.
The Cardinals, that's when I found them, and that's when I started
training my cousin, Jake Matthews, he's the left tackle for the Falcons.
Iron Man.
Yeah, he is. He had a little scare at the end of the season. He got hit in the side of a knee. Just, it happens. Guy rolled up, and don't quote me on this, and Jake will be upset that I don't know this, but I think he started somewhere between 160 to 180 straight games. I don't know the number because it's hard to watch offensive linemen on the Falcons. It's not as exciting. Sorry, Jake, forgive me. But he almost missed a game, and he battled through it. So he still has a streak, and I know that's important to him, and he probably says that publicly, but if not, I know just the way he's wired. But he trains in Houston because he's a homebody. But that's where those guys are located. So we're gonna walk through your story to the Giants. Let me take it back. I mean, most people know this, but if you don't, offensive linemen in the NFL, these are huge human beings. You're a big dude, 6'5", and walking around weight 280. Yeah. I mean, again, you got bulk up for the season. Maybe you get to 305.
I mean, some of these offensive linemen are big as 360.
Yeah, there's giants.
Yeah, I've been dropping the weight because at the same time you start playing longer, you start valuing your health, you start having kids, you start having a family, and you start reading and listening to guys like Andrew Huberman or Peter and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I need a cold plunge, I need a sauna, I need to watch my diet.
Carrying that much weight unless it is for work during the season, it's probably not great for you. And some of the centers can get away with being like a 285, 290. Who's the guy? Kelsey on the Eagles, guys like that. I played with Ryan Khalil, who was a fantastic center, and he was probably 290 if I had to guess, but big human being. So, were you just born big?
I was always like the biggest kid.
You're always the biggest kid.
I was always like a little bit chubby. I was always a big kid. Could never find that sport because when you're young, you're not playing tackle football and I was over the weight limit of playing any tackle youth football. So I didn't start playing until 7th grade. I had 2 older brothers, and you having brothers as well. There's an aggressive nature in the household. Everything was competitive, everything. And
were your brothers big?
They're stepbrothers. So they're a little bit smaller. But by the time I was in 8th or 9th grade, I was bigger than they were, but they were 10 years older.
Yeah, and I was going to say they probably just beat you.
Yeah, I got beat up on a little bit. So
that's good.
The aggressive side was good. As soon as I could go hit someone else my size, my age, it was a wrap. That's when I fell in love.
Where do you get your size from?
My dad. My dad's side is all 6 foot plus, but my dad was like a greaser. He was in a NASCAR. He didn't do any sports whatsoever. So I didn't really know I had anything to offer until I got on the football field.
All right. So what were you like as a kid? How would you describe yourself? And in the podcast, there's Explore Mentalities. Like, what if I were to talk to one of your coaches, your 7th grade coach, I would say, hey, what was Justin like? How would he describe you other than big?
Kind of painting the picture of how I grew up. My mom was a 5th grade teacher.
Yeah.
My father worked in NASCAR. He actually passed away when I was in 7th grade.
Sorry to hear that.
I had a stepdad that was kind of my dad figure because my dad lived in Texas and wasn't as much in the picture. My stepdad worked in construction, so very blue-collar upbringing. It was always...
Where was this?
In Pennsylvania, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just north of Philadelphia, suburbs of Philly. So we grew up Eagles fans.
I was going to say, you're an Eagles fan.
If you want to paint a picture, think of your prototypical Eagles fan. And I'm a little less. Bring me back down the spectrum a little bit. I wasn't as, crazy as some of those folks were. So, grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, have 2 older brothers, an older sister. Everything is a competition. So whether we're playing video games, I grew up in a hockey family, so we all played ice hockey to start. So I was always stuck in goal.
Do you think that helped your athleticism, eventually being as big as you are but still athletic? Do you think hockey helped?
Hockey, I wrestled a little bit when I was younger. I hated the one-on-one combat sport, so I had to do it because my family was like, hey, we're going to put you in wrestling at 6.
I make my son wrestle.
Yeah, and it is the number one sport, I think, for the foundation for any sport. You learn body control, how to work your body next to another person against their will.
You learn how to overcome your absolute fear and nervousness because you're going to physically combat another, and there's no place to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
Yeah, I have so much. I didn't do it, and I wish I did. I talked to my brothers, and my brothers Clay and Casey, who played in the league, they'll tell my son, like, this is the best thing you got. We wish you did it, but I have so much respect for my son or anyone who wrestled. My uncle Bruce, offensive lineman, he was actually a pretty good wrestler, and he would say that he credits wrestling for a lot of his success as a
leverage. I mean, that's what the trenches are.
He also said, he's like, I hated going against wrestlers, like guys on the D line who wrestled, and I can't remember, maybe like a John Randall or someone, but it's such a phenomenal sport. But the mental toughness, because it's so exhausting. There's nothing like grappling in terms of exhaustion, and you wrestle. And you learn a lot about yourself real quick.
You have to face that inner demon because it's you and another guy entering a ring. That's why I love the UFC and fighting so much, because it's the ultimate gladiator sport. We think we are, but it's 11 on 11. It's team. Yeah. When you have 2 guys entering an octagon and someone has to leave, I mean, I couldn't do it. That's why I transitioned to team sports. Yeah. But that was kind of the foundation. And I would think they would say competitive. That's the one thing that's always driven me. If I'm playing my 11-year-old nephew in basketball outside, like, I'm going to beat him.
Now, push back if you disagree with what I'm about to say. That's interesting to hear. My experience, a lot of offensive linemen aren't actually like that. A lot of offensive linemen, because they were really big their whole life, they're always stronger. Most of them are kind of gentle giants. Mm-hmm. Again, you get them on the football field, they know how to do their job and push people around, but they're almost like big little kids. Like a lot of offensive linemen, they're almost a little emotionally underdeveloped. They're the pranks, the immaturity, and they're so much fun to be around. But I found a lot of offensive linemen, more so than any other position group, they're actually pretty easy going. And so you saying you're hyper competitive, my experience, again, it's not to the level of yours, but I would say that's probably not as normal as people would think.
I played defensive line, middle linebacker through high school, guard. I played guard as well. We ran a triple option style of offense. So if you would ask my coaches, they would always say he played offensive line like a defensive lineman. I didn't know what pass protection was. So obviously, some of the listeners might not know, when you pass protect, you're going backwards. You can't go down the line, downfield. I would always just run block, but only go 2 yards down the field. So everything was aggressive for me. Like even now to this day, because I'm so much lighter than your typical guards, everything is aggressive. So sometimes I would tell Kyler or Daniel Jones, I'd be like, hey, look, I'm going to go out there and punch these guys and stone them on the line of scrimmage. There's going to be a few times where you're going to have a free runner in your face
because you miss.
Because you miss. So I'm more of a risk taker.
And Aaron Donald does that little swim move because you're in his division, right?
It's the biggest love-hate relationship in my career because he went to Pittsburgh. I was at Syracuse. We both got into the NFL right around the same time, and he's changed the game. He's the Lawrence Taylor of our generation.
Phenomenal.
And I hate him because I hate going against him and having to block him because he's so good, but I love him because that's why the Cardinals paid me to come out here and deal with him 2 times a year.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
so you're this competitive big kid. You start football 7th grade.
Yeah.
Was it right away you said, hey, I think I can do something with this?
I don't think it ever got to that point. I knew that I wasn't losing to these kids in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So how good really are we? You don't know. And as an offensive lineman, there's no metric. Oh, I had 2 touchdowns today, or
it is tough.
I had a couple sacks or things like that. So as I progressed through high school, my friends I wasn't very strong, but I had great body control. I probably would have been a good wrestler. And until I got my first scholarship offer, that's really when I noticed, like, whoa, all right, maybe.
When was that?
That was junior year of high school.
And what was that like, that moment?
It was, I was running a little business at the time. Me and my friends we would do like a poker game, and this at a time where probably 2008, 2007 at the time, when every kid was getting that like poker set for Christmas, and I was dealing poker, and we were getting a little rake. We were running a little casino.
So you're running a legal gambling ring. I got it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the statute of limitations is up on that one.
You're good.
We may be cutting that out. We'll see.
The feds won't be cutting.
So we're downstairs dealing poker, and I get this call from Greg Robinson, who's since passed away, but he was the D coordinator for the Broncos, won a Super Bowl, offering me a scholarship. So I remember at the time, Domino's had that 5-5-5 deal for pizza. So we had like 10 guys playing poker. I ordered 5-5-5 deal for everybody. It was like our way to comp the client that day. And, that was the first offer. And I thought, wow, I'm going to get an offer from everybody. If Greg Robinson's offer me, and Syracuse is the worst college football team right now, what's going to come throughout my senior year? And then no one else offered me going forward. That was the one and only offer I got.
Why do you think that is?
I was in a triple offense style offense. So a lot of run blocking, not much showcasing, any pass protection. I was the first Division I football player from my high school, so there was no pipeline for schools.
Yeah, and back then, well, what year was this?
2009. So I had to burn everything from VHS to DVD.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So you were right on the cusp. I mean, gosh, I'm getting old. I was going to say back in the day, like there wasn't even an internet website for rankings when I was coming out of college. So you made your highlight tape off your junior highlights and you put it onto a VHS and you put it in the mail.
Yeah.
They didn't really have even camps. And then
we had the camps, yeah.
You had the camps, and that helped. And you were probably right around the time. So this is kind of, I'm trying to think, like my brother Casey, he was the youngest of us.
How old is he?
He was born in 89.
So I'm a year old or younger.
Okay. So let's call it roughly the same era where I remember his senior year, I was like, my mind was blown. They made CD DVDs of his highlights, and then they created, he went to high school. You remember Jimmy Clausen?
Yeah.
Him and Jimmy are best buddies. They went to high school. So the Clausens had this all figured out. Like they were, I mean,
he was doing like the Elite 11 camp.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube too. Like I don't remember.
So then all of a sudden they made these highlights. They did the DVD, but then they upload his highlights to a YouTube. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so smart because it's exposure. And it helped going to Oaks Christian High School at the time with that team they had, the Clausen with the, he
was the number one player in the country.
He was the number one player in the country. He went to Notre Dame, unfortunately. But I don't think he ever beat SC. Sorry, Jimmy. So you're around this time. Nowadays, it's. I mean, you probably would have an Instagram that did every highlight.
They have Huddle now, where you can literally click on a link in a guy's profile, and the team's already cut it for you.
So now they have Huddle. You can look at all these highlights. It's just a different era. So you don't have the exposure. You get this one offer. I mean, you're excited the day you receive it. You do the 5-5-5 Domino's celebration, but talk to me mentally from, kind of a psychological perspective. I would say that had to have been a little discouraging though, as your junior into senior year. It's crickets, right?
Yeah, I mean, the one school I wanted to go to is Boston College. My family was big fans. No one went there. They were just fans of Boston College. And they kind of told me they were going to offer me. They kept leading me on. Hey, we have this kid that if he doesn't commit in the All-American game, we're going to give you the offer. So the last week before signing day, Boston College comes in and offers me a scholarship. Okay. And I'm like, wow, this is the school that I wanted to go to. They had put offensive linemen in the NFL. Mm-hmm. It felt it could be a good opportunity.
Matt Ryan maybe had just come out of there.
Matt Ryan had just graduated. Yeah. They had Anthony Costanzo was there and going to be a first-round pick. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to jump ship from Syracuse and go right to BC, work my way up. And I remember my stepdad telling me, he's like, there's something about loyalty. There's something about trust. And these Syracuse guys have been with you since day one. And Greg Robinson actually got fired through this process after my junior year. And Doug Marrone came in, NFL coach. And he left the Saints, took the Syracuse job. It was his alma mater. And he rescinded almost every scholarship except for 3 guys, me, a receiver, and another offensive lineman. And my stepdad was like, look, this guy believes in you. He knows something. He's an NFL coach. Like, we never thought NFL in a million years. We thought, go to school, get my degree in finance, go work on Wall Street in finance, maybe be a wealth manager for athletes. And my stepdad, I credit him to this day. When I did my official visit, I wanted to go with the D-line. He pushed me to the O-line. When it came time to commit, he's union, construction, project manager. He worked for Skanska, a big company. And I think he just constantly pushed me in the right direction without forceful at times, like, hey, no, you're going to go over here. But he was like, those are the things you value in life: trust, loyalty, like honor, all those different things. Like Boston College, they didn't want you. They kind of just threw you a charity offer at the end because they
kind of led you along.
Yeah,
I got you.
So I committed to Syracuse, and that was it.
Carrier Dome.
We played SC. That actually is the game that put me on the map with NFL scouts 3 years later.
Really?
Yeah.
Did we play?
You had Matt Barkley at quarterback. Nick Perry was the defensive end that I went against.
Did we play you in the Meadowlands?
So that was back-to-back years. We came out to the Coliseum, played you guys there.
Got it.
You guys beat us pretty good. And then that was my junior year of college. And then my senior year, we played at MetLife.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's been a tough decade for us relative to the expectations. But when you were getting ready throughout your junior year, was your stepdad pushing you? And what I mean by that is actually like pushing you to work out and take it more seriously, or were you still just kind of relying on God-given talent?
I didn't take it too serious throughout high school. I didn't really,
like, you would just go and do the weightlifting.
I was running a casino in my buddy's basement. I was trying to make money. Like, yeah. I really have always been interested in making money and figuring out ways to do so because, like I said, my mom was a school teacher. My stepdad was.
I was going to ask, why do you think that is?
I would see how other kids were living, and I wanted to do that. Like I wanted to have my own money. So my parents were like, "Well, if you want to go to Six Flags this weekend, you got to have some spending money." My parents, we never were without. We always had everything we needed.
But there wasn't excess where it's like, "Hey, here's a bunch of money, have fun."
Yeah, and my 2 uncles at the time both worked in wealth management. They have one has their own IRA right now, and I saw how he was living. He was driving the Range Rover. He owned some real estate in town. He was golfing and went down to Florida in the winters, and I saw that, and that's kind of who was my financial mentor.
Got it. And so you aspired to have that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you went to Syracuse, walk us through that. You get on campus, you're a freshman. Was it success right away, or was it?
It was a wake-up call.
It was a wake-up.
The commitment to play at that next level is unlike anything else. Yeah. Like that culture shock was more of a culture shock than going to the NFL.
Yeah.
I had an NFL-style head coach, so he ran everything like the NFL. And literally from day one, Marrone was trying to change the program. So we had, you saw Deion Sanders recently, like 50-some-odd kids or 30 to 50-some-odd kids left the program. Same thing happened at Syracuse that year.
And back then,
he was telling kids, like, you're going to be cleaning toilets to keep your scholarship, basically.
I remember when I was at SC my freshman year, we had Paul Hackett. He got let go, and Pete Carroll came in.
Yeah.
And Pete's a great guy. I mean, I've talked enough about Pete Carroll, but he's awesome. I mean, it just really, it's just such a blessing to play underneath him. But he's a businessman, and he came in And I don't know how they did it, but they were managed to get 35, 40 guys out that first 12 months. And some of it was medicaling them. You remember to medical, it was like, hey, Justin, you've had 3 knee surgeries. You're never going to play here. But if you take this medical scholarship, the program gets their scholarship back to go give to another guy, but you get to keep your academic scholarship. You're not paying for your tuition, and you just have to like do some things around the program. So they medicaled a lot of guys, and others, they just were like, you're like, go find somewhere else to play. We'll release you.
I think the way that you see it too, if you watch that Florida Gators documentary, you see what Urban Meyer did in Florida.
I haven't yet,
there was a blueprint for how to get guys to quit.
Yet. Nowadays,
the crazy winter workouts and just going over the top.
Nowadays, because of the transfer portal, it almost kind of it's easier for coaches to come in and do that. Other things are harder. But they just say, hey, you're not our guy. You're not going to play. You should enter the transfer. Well, back then, like to transfer, you would have to sit out a year or two. It was
you had to go down to another division. You couldn't even play D1 football if you left.
NCAA.
It's gone a little bit too far the other way, where there's a little bit too like the transfer portal has to get figured out, and NIL has to get figured out. But
that's a different conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so I had that same experience when I went down to SC. That first,
I was calling my mom crying, like I want to come home.
I called my dad crying, and my dad said, "You're not allowed to come home." He's like, you're not allowed to quit. And it was the best thing he ever told me. And it sounds like similar, your stepdad had that type of mentality. He's like, you made a commitment.
Yep.
Yeah. And so did you your body started adjusting? It started getting stronger. It started leaning out.
My nickname was Puny when I was at Syracuse because I didn't lift. I couldn't bench more than 225 5 times. So they redshirted me my first year. And I had to make that decision. Did I want to go to Syracuse to party and be out in the social scene, or did I want to make sure I committed to playing football? So I was, they traveled, me and my roommate, we were both freshman offensive linemen, to get some experience and just see what it's like to go to the Penn States, to go to the Coliseum. And that year we were on the scout team, and we just won against the starting defense, and they kicked our butts for the first few weeks. It's
probably the best thing for you.
And we kind of created this bond, our recruiting class, and we called ourselves, I forget, we had the name, we were like the Green Boys or whatever, because we wore green jerseys because we were practice squad guys. Yeah. And we would fight the older guys. The senior offensive linemen didn't really like us too much. And going into that spring as a redshirt freshman, I earned the starting left tackle job because I played so well.
All right.
And
so that's a big transformation coming in as a puny guy, literally, right? Yeah. And did you get much stronger?
Got a lot stronger. I mean, when you come in, and it's intimidating as a freshman because you have grown men. You have fifth-year seniors who are 23, 24 years old, and you're 17, 18. And we're going to the weight room, and we're doing the 225 test, the cleaning, squatting. Everyone's doing 600 pounds, screaming. It's very macho.
Very masculine.
And I remember waiting. I'm like, I'm going to be the last one. I'm going to do my 5 reps real quick. A receiver that we had came up and did like 12. And I'm like, this guy's 185 pounds. How did he just do 12 reps at 225? So I'm about to get on the bar, and they know I'm weak. I should have been a boot too. I sprained my ankle playing basketball senior week in high school, where you go and party the last week before you go to college. So I'm in a boot. I was a mess to start. So I'm getting ready to do my 225 bench press, and the strength coach goes and gets all the seniors to come watch me. And that's when I got the nickname Puny. I struggled to get to 3, and then I got 1, 2 more, and did 5.
That must
for comparison, my roommate did 23 reps at 225, and guys in the combine do 40 reps at 225. Yeah. So that earned me the nickname, and it was kind of that chip on my shoulder the rest of my career.
What were you able to get at the combine?
I think I did 25 or 26.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I got to the point where I needed to get to, but it was rough to start.
The most I ever got, I think, was like 17, 18, but I was a safety, so it wasn't as big.
And that's probably as much as any safeties.
No, there are some strong safeties.
USC did have one of the best. Taylor Mays was his name.
Taylor was
and
after
this dude
me. Yeah,
was
he was a freak.
A freak.
He's like 6'4", like 220, ran a 4.3. Just that game, he almost should have been a linebacker. We had Darnell Bing, I played the position of Troy Polamalu, so that's not
It's tough.
I
played with a bunch of USC guys. I played with Keith Rivers when I was in New York. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a great dude.
Yeah. So you start your redshirt freshman year. Walk me through what's going through your mind. You're snapping your helmet up before the game. Are you just nervous?
I'm a puke guy. I'm a dry heave before the game.
Try not to be too graphic. I'm not a puker. I'm the other.
Yeah, the other way. So I remember the first huddle. I threw up on my shoes. My guy to the left and our quarterback all ended up playing in the NFL. All us 3 did, and I remember, I still to this day, if I don't get nervous, I shouldn't be playing in the NFL anymore. Even 11 years in, 130 starts, I'd still do the same thing.
I agree, but is it a little subdued, or is it the feeling's the same, but you're just so much better at working through it?
So much better at working through it. I do a lot of breath work now pregame to kind of build the angst or build the excitement for the game. I start with like country music when I'm driving to the stadium now instead of going right into the rap and the higher end stuff.
The way it works, man, once you get in that locker room is hip hop. That's just the culture of I remember I tried to play country music a couple times in the locker room at SC and the guys were like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? And I was like,
the music is so I'm also getting older now. The music is so loud in the locker room right now that you can't win. You can't make it happen.
It's mostly hip hop. I mean, again, understandably so. So, you're puking on your shoes. Okay. Who are you playing? Do you remember who you're playing?
Our first game, it was like an Akron. It was a MAC school, but the first real game, Washington Huskies at Washington.
And that's
I think it was like our second or third.
I played at that stadium. That's a loud stadium.
Shaking.
When they score, it goes.
But the fan, it has that awning, that aluminum awning that just starts shaking, and it's almost
shaking. The stands go super vertical. That's a loud stadium.
And I remember I took somebody off the screen. Like I absolutely decapitated somebody on a run play, and I just remember thinking like, all right, I can do this. And the confidence started to build, and made all conference as a redshirt freshman.
Really?
And then the following year we go and play SC. It's my redshirt sophomore year, so my third year in college, and I went against Nick Perry, who ends up getting drafted in the first round.
Yeah, Nick was such an athletic freak. Like he was great, and he was his bull rush was intense. I mean, you could tell me.
And I shut him down.
Did you?
As soon as that game ended, agents start calling.
I got you.
Agents start calling. Then I go against Bruce Irving, who was a first-round pick. Have a great game against him.
West Virginia.
And then lo and behold, the kid that I'm going against at Syracuse is Chandler Jones, who ends up being a first-round pick and, still to this day.
Iron sharpens iron, right?
And we didn't even know it. We made a pact after that year. We were both going to go first round. We would call ourselves the FRB, first-round boys.
Yeah.
And he went 21 overall to the Patriots, and then I came back the next year and went 19. So I edged him out. He's made a whole lot more money than I have now.
Yeah, man. He did very well with the Patriots, and I don't remember how that all shook out. He didn't sign
Got traded to the Cardinals.
And then he
got a
did great. Big because usually Belichick trades guys right as they're done peaking, but he did great. I don't know if he's in the league still, but so you were in college for 4 years. To explain, a red shirt is your freshman year. You can extend a year eligibility, but you're not eligible to play in the games.
Yeah.
And so that's usually it's a great tool for development. Obviously,
I'm the perfect example for that.
Yeah, you just benching 225 5 times. Like you needed 12 months to kind of adjust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so after your junior year, did you declare?
So after my redshirt junior year, my fourth season at Syracuse, I knew going into that season. I tore my labrum in spring ball, so I missed the first 4 games of my senior season. But going into that summer, I remember guys are saying, "Hey, you're a second, third round pick. Like you have potential to have a great year to get drafted." My mom, the school teacher, told me if I didn't get my degree, I wasn't leaving college. Yeah. So that last summer, I took 5 courses, got my degree in finance, and was able to make the decision after my senior year. Do I want to leave and go to the NFL, or do I want to stay? And at that point, Doug Marrone had taken the job with the Buffalo Bills. Our starting quarterback was gone. So I kind of knew the writing was on the wall for me to go. So I declared for the draft, and off I went.
Walk me through the project. You touched on it earlier, the process of agents. Agents start calling. Yeah. They're not supposed to induce you to, but how did that process go? And again, ultimately, who'd you end up deciding to go for?
Yeah, so again, I thought I was going to sign. So Arthur Jones, which is Chandler Jones' older brother, also played in the NFL, won a Super Bowl ring. And then in the middle, they have this brother. His name's John Jones, the UFC fighter. You might have heard of him.
I was going to say, I don't
So they had an agent, and so Chandler just went first round. His brother Art was in the NFL, so I was going to sign with their agent, Athletes First. His name's Joe Panos. He's a great guy. And
Athletes First reps all my family.
Yeah. So
I had David Dunn on this podcast.
There you go. So I don't know if Joe is still with Athletes First. He might not. Whatever. Either way. So I'm signing with Joe. It's a done deal. And I have a bunch of different agents calling. I had a Jerry Maguire-esque guy for my neighborhood who's just like, "You'll be my only client. We're gonna run this." So I liked him a lot. He really was a good
It
salesman.
almost was going to be heartbreaking to tell him no.
And then the third was this guy. His name's Andy Ross. He was with Octagon at the time.
Yeah, I interviewed Octagon.
Yeah, and I was just like, he's a great marketer. He's just trustworthy. It's just one of those things where he kind of stuck out to me. So those are my final three. It's this behemoth in Athletes First who gets all the top guys. Somewhere in the middle, Octagon, upper echelon, and then this guy that's like, all right, I'll give this guy a shot. And I had in-person meetings, and again, my stepdad vetted all this for me.
I was going to ask, was he involved?
He was involved heavily.
I tell people sometimes ask if my brothers and I are involved in business or finance, and I said we have and really never have done anything ever together. Them in real estate, me in their lives. The only thing I ever was involved in was when Clay was coming out. My dad and Clay asked me like, "Hey, you pitch for a living, you interview people for a living, you do interview. Could you help us, with these interviews?" So I went into these interviews. I was asking like brokerage questions and twisting like, "What is your value of rep? Like, walk me through, your process for delivering marketing." And I was taking my brokerage brain and applying it, but yeah, that was the only time I ever did. But I similar process where you kind of loop in family and hope that they provide you some good advice. So it sounds like your stepdad was doing a good job.
Yeah, he did a great job. And like he was a project manager for Skanska. So it was almost like hiring a subcontractor. He was like, "Hey, how are you going to deliver on time and do all these things you said?" And Joe had something pop up where he couldn't make the meeting. And this guy, Andy Ross, came in and he just wowed us. I mean, Octagon had worked with a bunch of Olympic athletes, Michael Phelps at the time. So you see that. And then he had Aaron Curry, who was a fourth overall pick from Wake Forest, Dwayne Brown, he was a first round pick. So I start seeing like, all right, this guy, I would be one of his bigger clients. He would treat me and I have all this marketing engine behind it. And I ended up going with Andy. I trusted my gut. I went with Andy, the guy in my neighborhood. That was one of the hardest calls of the time to tell him. And I wasn't a businessman at the time, but my stepdad made me call him and say, "Hey, you're going to let him know you're not going with him."
Stepdad sounds like a G, man.
Yeah, he is. He's Irish Catholic, so he's tough. We're a tough love family. We don't hug and kiss and say "I love you."
Oh, Matthew's like, no.
Not at all.
Like, what's up, dude? Yeah. All right, cool.
Exactly. I honestly, at this point, like I shake his hand when I leave the house right now. And my wife's family's Italian, and they all hug and kiss.
Oh, yeah.
So I sometimes bear hug him and give him a big hug. But he's kind of, he's fallen through the cracks through my NFL career because everyone wants to talk about my father and him passing away, and that's always was a story. Yeah. And I'm like, well, honestly, this guy over here, my stepdad, he's the one who was the real father figure in my life. And to raise someone that's not even your own son that way, it just speaks to the character of the man that he is.
Well, sounds like a great guy. So he also blessed or liked Octagon?
Yeah, everyone did. My mom was there, and she's, she had a good feeling. Everyone signed off. So we signed with Octagon. And
where'd they send you to go work out?
In Atlanta, CES with this guy Chip Smith, and it was great. Moving away from home to a place where you just had to focus on football.
A diet program, weightlifting program.
Get the weight up. Get the weight up because
what were you weighing at the time?
I was about 300 pounds, but they wanted me to be 310. Like if you're gonna play tackle in the NFL,
yes,
they really want you 310 minimum. So I go down to Atlanta, I start training, and the one thing that, and I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, I got to play in the Senior Bowl. So I was the first ever junior, because I graduated from college, that was able to play in the Senior Bowl. Me and DJ Fluker, who played at Alabama. So we were the first two to ever do it, and now it's become a norm. As long as you graduate, you can play in that game. So shout out to my agent, Andy Ross. He was the one who got me in that game and elevated my stock there. Got to work with some NFL coaches.
Yeah, both my brothers played in that. I think Jake played in that. That was a great showcase. I don't know if it's still as big now.
It is. A lot of the top guys are playing, and you get some great coaches. So that really propelled my draft grade. And that year, there was no quarterback, there was no running back, there was no Matt Leinart or Vince Young. It was, and not to knock anybody, like the top quarterback taken that year was EJ Manuel, 16th overall. Yeah. Geno Smith, who's still playing in the NFL, went into the second round. And then the quarterback that I played with got drafted in the fourth round, Ryan Nassib. And so that year, there was just no surefire number one overall pick. So it was all offensive linemen.
All O-linemen.
It was the perfect storm for me. After pick 12, every O-lineman was gone. And I'm sitting there like, I'm the only one left.
Well, hold on. So you're training in Atlanta. You're getting ready. What were you hearing around the time? Likely first round?
Second round was kind of where we thought we would go. It was, I thought maybe Philadelphia, they had the 4th overall pick. I thought maybe early second round.
Yeah, like the 36th pick or whatever that is.
That's what I was thinking.
And so you're training. Did you go to Indianapolis for the combine?
Went to Indy for the combine. I got red flagged for having short arms. As an offensive lineman, you need to have 30.
I noticed when you walked in, you had short. No, I'm just
exactly. So I was like 32 and a half or 32 instead of 33.
Tackle can be a guard, center. Yeah. It's less so a tackle, especially because generally you're outside arm free out there. So
the quicker you can get your hands on them and redirect their force, the better. So, my arms were a half inch too short. So everyone was like, I don't know if he can play tackle in the NFL. And so I thought that was going to affect the draft grade.
If you're listening, imagine an industry where you're interviewing for a job and they're like looking at your body and they're
at the combine. I mean, you can attest this. It's a meat market.
You get into your underwear in front of 80 people who are like
80 grown men.
And they're evaluating the shape of your shoulders, the arch of your back, like in addition to injury history, things like that. They take a measure from your pinky to your thumb as to what size hands you have, which for a quarterback or receiver I get. It's wild because again, at the time as an athlete, you're like, well, yeah, this is just life. It's not until you get into like the normal world, the real world, where you're like no other.
You don't ask your coworker their 40-yard. Hey, what's your 40-yard dash? How many times you bench 225?
It makes sense, but like as someone who runs a pretty big company now, like I think we have about 800 people.
You don't make them run a 40-yard dash during the interview?
No, actually, we do sprint competitions outside of our office buildings. Like the new agents will sprint, and they're in like a suit and shoes, and like it never ends well. But that's them kind of. We have a thing called Competition Thursday. Like you cannot leave the office until you challenge someone to a competition. So inevitably, sometimes it's cold calls, sometimes it's push-ups, sometimes it's sprints. And I worry about guys getting injured. It hasn't happened yet, thank God. But there are questions in job interviews like you can't ask, right? And that's part of employment and all these things. Like that does not exist in the NFL. It's like, excuse me, you can't ask me that question. That's a personal question. Like
they know it all. I mean, they sit you in interviews just like this. And the craziest one I had was with the Patriots and Bill Belichick. I remember I'm sitting up there.
They just start yelling at you.
They have on screen like, hey, show us your favorite run, draw it up, talk us through it, show it to us on film this year. So I'm blocking up power, which is every offensive lineman's favorite play. It's just you get double team blocks, a guy pulling around. It's a staple in the NFL. And Bill Belichick actually is sitting behind me on a laptop. I'm not even looking him in the eyes, but he's talking to me as I'm looking at the TV screen. And I look back to like answer his question. No, look forward. So I don't even get to look at Bill Belichick. I didn't even get the honor of looking him in the eyes. And they would bring up, I got a fishing without a license one time. I was out at lake fishing with my buddies, and we weren't permitted to fish. And I got fishing without a license. And they're like, I'm telling them I have like these 8 best friends. Like we all grew up together, 7 best friends, 8 including me. We all grew up together since first grade. We all have a tattoo of an 8 on us, like a bunch of idiots. He's like, oh, are these friends of yours? They're the ones that you were fishing without a license with? Are they going to be causing issues down the road? And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they don't mess around.
They found like
they're
14,
about to pour,
yes.
I don't know what it is, 10, 15, 20 million dollars into a human being. They're going to evaluate that investment before they make it. It's
like underwriting a deal.
It is like underwriting a deal. Yeah. Just a little more unpredictable, I would say.
Yeah, you're right.
Usually with apartment buildings, I mean, unless you have like a bad analyst, like your assumptions are relatively correct, right? All right, so it's draft day. Where was draft? Still in New York at the time?
Still in New York.
I know they move it around.
I didn't get invited.
Really?
Wasn't invited to New York.
They do that for likely first rounders, so that actually very much validates what you said earlier, where it's like we were thinking second round. Was that something that pissed you off?
It pissed me off, but at the same time, it took a lot of pressure off. My mom had bought every hat for me, so she had every hat laid out at the house. We had a watch party. So I was looking back, I was able to enjoy that moment with all my closest family and friends.
Did you get the video? Did they have the video camera at your house?
No. So a friend of mine worked in videography, and he brought his camera. He's like, hey, you mind if I just film it just for our own internal?
Oh, that's cool.
And he put it up on YouTube, and actually the moment went viral because, when guys get drafted, all my buddies dog pile on top of me, and the next morning it's like, on ESPN, all my friends going nuts.
When Clay was up, he was also, we were thinking second, but he just smoked it at the combine. Like he tested really well. And so it was like maybe first, like we were hearing the Patriots, like they had the 26th pick, I think. And, but he didn't get invited to New York, and that's fine. We didn't expect that. I doubt he would have gone anyway. So we had friends and family, not huge, probably 30 people at the house, but they did have a camera crew there. And so he ended up, it was the 26th pick, the Patriots on the clock. He gets a call from an area code we don't know. He's like, hey, nice to meet you, sir. Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. We're like, he's going to the Patriots. Like, hell yeah. Belichick coached my dad in Cleveland towards the end of his career. It was a 3-4 defense. It was really exciting. And all of a sudden, Clay, and he puts the phone down and mutes it. He goes, the Patriots traded to the Packers. I'm going to Green Bay. And we're like, what? What? Well, I mean, as you know,
I shouldn't say, Green Bay is a historic, but like,
no. But look, it didn't have in the moment the sex appeal that Boston and the Patriots had and Tom Brady, but they had this little young guy named Aaron Rodgers. So it ended up being amazing, and Green Bay was incredible. And like, my brother loved it there, loved it.
That's all I hear from guys.
When you get drafted, so you're sitting on your couch. All right, so Justin, you're sitting on your couch. You got your mom, your stepdad, your brothers, your boys, but you got your cell phone, right? Make sure you have good service.
Yeah.
Did you have an inkling of where you were going to go?
I had an inkling that at that point, I had flown out and met with the Dallas Cowboys, who had like the 16th or 17th overall pick. Chicago Bears came in last minute and worked me out, and they had the 20th overall pick. So I thought there was a chance that one of those two teams could be in play. Now, like I said, I thought the Eagles maybe early second round, but after 12 hit and DJ Fluker got drafted, there was no one else on the board. I mean, there was no other offensive linemen that were graded in first round besides me. So I knew at that point I probably was going to go in the first round. And the Cowboys are next on the clock. They needed offensive linemen. I'm thinking I'm going to Dallas. Buzzer goes across. Cowboys trade the pick to San Francisco. They take a safety. All right, we're out. Dallas is gone. So now I'm like, all right, Chicago at 20. That's the only other one that makes sense. So 18 goes, and then 19 comes, and it's the New York Giants. And, we're sitting there watching it. My friends were just like, please don't let it be New York, because we're all Philadelphia Eagles fans. They didn't want Dallas either. So when that trade happened, they all cheered.
Did you have any idea that they were interested? I know they didn't fly out or work out, but
no, I didn't work out for them. I met with them at the combine. So
with Clay too, like there were 3 or 4 teams, the Redskins, the Patriots that flew them out, worked them out. The Packers did not. And then later, Ted Thompson, GM, said we didn't want to tip anyone off. So
the Giants, I got a call from a 201 number. I pick it up. It's Tom Coughlin. We're taking you with the 19th overall pick. He's a Syracuse guy as well. He's like, look, you're going to have to burn all that Eagles. Because I was selling the Eagles hard. I wanted to go to the Eagles really bad. Yeah. And he's like, you're going to have to burn all that Eagles gear you have. And I said, hey, it's just Syracuse University and the New York Giants. And put me on with the GM, Jerry Reese at the time. Yeah. And hey, we're, congratulations.
What was that
moment
New York?
Like? I hung on. I get goosebumps thinking about it right now.
And hey, you got it. Look. People have cried on this podcast. It's like, was it overwhelming where it's like you just start bawling? Like
no, it was the business in me kicked out. Go back to the casino, and when I was young, I called my agent right away and said, "How much? Like, what's the contract?" Like, that's the first thing I wanted to know. Right. Let's start talking business right now. So as soon as it was a euphoric
and you're
moment.
Slotted.
Like, yeah. So I relatively knew who went before me the year before, but as soon as all my friends got off, like they were all jumped on top of me. That was the first call.
So at that time, and it's funny. It doesn't matter what generation of NFL players, they all look at current generation like these guys are so overpaid. What year was this? This was 2013. 13.
Yeah.
So like if I were to ask my uncle Bruce, he'd be like, Justin, like how much money you got? But like nowadays, you look at what guys are coming out. But how much was it at the time?
It was a 4-year, $8.2 million contract.
8.2. What would it be today?
Ooh, I don't know. It'd probably be $4 or $5 million more. Probably 12.
Yeah. Okay.
14
so
million.
It's not as.
I'd have to look it up. I may be exaggerating. But top guards in the NFL at the time were making like $5 million, and now top guards are making $20 million.
That's right.
So
it's crazy.
It's 4x what it was.
Yeah. So it sounds like. Maybe you're just wired this way. Some of it also your upbringing, being in a blue collar family where you always had enough, but it's not excess. What was the feeling like when you heard 8.2 million? Was it like a moment of relief? Like, okay, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, it was a moment of like my life just changed forever. Like I get to be. My friends and I grew up watching Entourage, and for me, it was like, all right, now we're gonna live the life. Like now is the time that we get to like move to New York, And the first weekend that I got drafted, it was like, we all went out. We went to a club. I'd never been to a club before. I never had gotten bottle service before. So it was like all those times where we had to like sneak into bars or like hand back the ID to get in, and we couldn't go to certain places. Now it was like they rolled the red carpet out for us. And to be a first round pick in New York City for the New York Giants, I don't know if there's a better organization like to welcome you day one and a city to welcome you day one like New York welcomed me. And that's like, boom, we're off to the races. Like I was built to be in New York City.
Now, you guys practice out in the Meadowlands, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But where'd you live when you got?
I lived in Jersey City at the time, in Hoboken. So it's like the sixth borough where everyone. That's where most of the guys live.
Yeah, I was gonna say they don't.
But I was in the city.
You're in the city a lot,
all the time.
Do some of the guys keep a place in the city or no?
Well, some guys do.
You gotta have a lot of.
Yeah, the second year, or the second contract guys, they'll have a place in the city.
And so, what was that like when you we talked about your first couple days, weeks, and year at Syracuse? What was the acclimation like to the NFL?
It was the best thing ever. Like, I had money. I got an American Express for the first time. I didn't have a limit on it. So it's just like, drop the Amex. Bought a Range Rover, the car that my uncle had that I always wanted. And that was my first big purchase. And my uncle
watched Step Brothers, like, growing to drive Range Rovers. You know?
Exactly. And, that's, my buddies were they were finishing up college because I had left a semester early for our senior year. And so my friends moved in with me. Like, we thought we were entourage. We ended up being old school. We ended up being like a fraternity where 4 of my buddies lived with me. We had this guy next door who was 75 years old. His wife had passed away. He would hang out with us all the time. So we had like our Blue from old school.
Yeah, Blue, you're my boy.
Yeah, and we had a great time. And then we were, playing football. It was a little bit of a struggle. I was playing for Tom Coughlin at the time.
He's a tough coach, right?
I struggled my rookie year a little bit. And that was almost like similar to my freshman year. I got to school and I wanted to go party and live the life, and I'm free. I don't have my parents watching over me. And now it's like, I'm in New York City. They just gave me $8 million. Yeah, my signing bonus was for 4. Yeah. Uncle Sam took half. I thought I got robbed the first day because I'm like, where's the rest of the money? My uncle had to enlighten me. Hey, taxes and agent fees. And
you said, I need to get into real estate.
That's 5 years down the road once I figured out the benefits of real estate.
Yeah.
And that's how we were off and running. In New York City, still to this day, that I couldn't have picked. If I could go back and change it all, I wouldn't change a thing.
So, first game, did you start?
Yeah, I started my first game. Sunday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys.
Did you puke on your shoes?
Dry heaving. I stopped throwing up. Like, once I got into the NFL, I'm like, I can't puke on Eli Manning's shoes on national TV. So I would just like either throw up in a trash can before or just dry heaving.
And what position were you playing?
Right tackle.
Right tackle. And so what was that first game like?
I look over and it's DeMarcus Ware lined up across from me the first snap, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion. And I'm just like, don't mess this up. Don't let up a sack. Don't get embarrassed in front of millions and millions of people on national TV, because it's not like I'm playing defense or receiver. You drop a pass, you miss a tackle, you're going to hear it, but you're not getting the franchise Super Bowl winning quarterback hit. I got to look Eli. I got to look his parents in the eyes. I got to look his brother in the eye. He's NFL royalty. Mm-hmm. If there's one thing I found out in the NFL, you don't mess with NFL royalty. And it was, I struggled at first. I struggled in my NFL season. Then I just... At one point,
is it just the speed and the strength?
Everything. I was playing out of position too. I played on the left side my entire career, and then moving to the right side.
It's a different muscle.
The analogy I love to give, and I think it was T.J. Lang from the Packers gave this, and you probably know Lang and Josh Sitton, both those guys. It was one of the two. I forget.
They were great players too.
They would say switching sides is like wiping your ass with the other hand. When you'll get the job done, it's going to be a little messy, and you're not going to look forward to doing it again.
I never heard.
And you're a little anxious about doing it again. So. Imagine that, and then you have DeMarcus Ware lining up across from you. It was a lot.
Did you survive the first game?
Survived the first game. Then the next game I have Von Miller. Then the next game I have Justin Houston in Kansas City. Then the next game I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Then I have Brian Arakpo, Ryan Kerrigan. So it never stopped. It was relentless. And how I found my way in the NFL is I fought. I was just competitive. I would go out there and punch you in the mouth every single play. You might get me, but you're not going to get me for an entire game. And that was my philosophy. I played against your brother multiple times. I mean, he might have got me for a sack, but the next play I'm going to go jump set him and get on him and make his life tough that day.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, they played at the Giants. They're in the NFC, so I'm sure they played against you guys. And you were 2013, and he played to the Packers till 2018. So yeah, there probably were some games you guys went against each other.
For sure.
I'll have to ask him.
I mean, we probably can look it up. I guarantee there was plays he got me.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's 70 plays on one side a game. Like it's very difficult to shut someone down the entire game
of that caliber too.
Yeah, of that caliber. So, I mean, what is it? So many people. I once heard Pete Carroll say, and this is applicable to a lot of industries and professions, but the NFL, it's so easy to understand. He was talking about a player I played with, a phenomenal receiver who got drafted top 10 and then was a bust in the NFL. All right. And he was out of the league in 3 or 4 years, Mike Williams.
Yeah.
And then when Pete became the coach of Seattle, Mike called him and was like, hey, I want to give it a shot. And Pete, because he's this type of guy, he's like, look, you come try out. And Pete talked about this, so I'm doing my best to remember what he said. He's like, I was like, of course, I'll give him a tryout, but like, this is a waste of time. What are you talking about? He's not going to make it. He's been out of the league 2-3 years. He didn't make it in the league. And Mike showed up. He was in incredible shape, crushed the workout, excuse me. Pete signed him, and he had like a 5, 6, 7 year run with the Seahawks where he was a very good receiver. He's like 1,000-yard receiver. And someone was asking Pete, like, why do you think he failed with the Lions and then was out of the league? He's like, because he's like, and you see this with a lot of people. He's like, most people's dream is to make the league. It's like, my dream is to make it to the NFL. But he's like, most people, the mistake they make is their dream is to make the league. It's not to be successful when they're there. And some people, they adjust their dream and or they find success.
Yeah.
But for you, did you ever have these moments where you're like, okay, I made the NFL. I'm this first round pick. I got this money. I'm good. Or was that something that maybe you struggle with as kind of like, okay, you hit this goal, this life goal, or this dream that so many people would give, hey, I want to go to the NFL. It's like, okay, you're there. Did you ever have that moment where you struggled or how did you pivot to say, okay, now that I'm here, I want to actually have a career and be successful and actually like make a positive impact on my team?
Yeah, so that was my second year. The first year, it's a whirlwind. You go from training to combine to drafted to playing. The second year, I had some time to like, really relax, enjoy my off season a bit, train. And my second year, I'm thinking, this is the year I have a coming out party. This is where I turn the career on. The rookie year, I made all rookie team over guys like Lane Johnson and Eric Fisher, who was, I think, the first overall pick that year. So I'm like, all right, I'm doing something. Like I started every game. I was like the first Giant first-round pick to start every game since Lawrence Taylor. So I'm feeling myself a little bit. Going to my second year, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take that next step and become just a dominant right tackle for the next 10 years. And I didn't.
Oh, you did not? Okay.
I struggled my second year. I go out and play Philadelphia on prime time, and I'm from Philadelphia, so that game always meant more to me. I wanted to go beat those guys so bad. I go out on Sunday Night Football, let up 4 sacks in a game. And for a lineman to let up 4 sacks, let up 1 sack, you had a bad game. To let up 4 on national TV against the hometown team, it was like nightmare fuel. I remember crying on the bus ride home, like, I'm never going to live this down. And Twitter is now a thing, and people are tweeting, and the things that were probably said.
I played with a guy, he was a very good tackle in college, Winston Justice, and he's a good buddy of mine now. He lives in Nashville. And he's done very well after his career. He's in wealth management for Alliance Bernstein. Okay. And so he played for the Eagles.
And the opposite happened with the Giants.
And he was playing the Giants. I think it was Strahan. I think he gave up 6, 7 sacks. And I remember watching the game, and I was like, my heart was breaking because I knew him. Yeah. I mean, we played together 3 out of my 4 years at SC. And I remember thinking, like, how do you bounce back? And he did. He ended up having a really good career. It sounds like, obviously you did, but you give up 4 sacks. That's, I mean, let's relate this to your everyday listener to this podcast. Like, imagine your absolute worst case scenario nightmare in your career happening on the big pitch or the big report or the big stage on a Sunday Night Football actually coming true, which for most of the time it doesn't. You're on the bus, you're crying. Like, what's going through your head?
I'm getting cut. I'm getting traded. I'm getting benched. All those things. And you got to watch film next to Eli Manning the next day and explain to the offense.
How was Eli?
He's awesome. He's a big kid. We now see his personality. Yeah. He was like that in the locker room.
He probably made some jokes like, hey, like, yeah.
They were, well, with Tom Coughlin, there wasn't as many jokes made in front of him. And I just remember him with this look of disappointment. We lost the game 38-0. Victor Cruz blows his Achilles out. Basically, that's the end of his Giants career. Yeah. And I just felt the weight of the world. Like it was all my fault. And at that point, I'm like, now I'm in survival mode. Just
did
to stay in
Coughlin,
the
as
NFL.
hard as I've heard he is, was there ever a moment where he understood, like, hey, for me to beat this guy down mentally even more, that's not, did he ever like...
Tough love. There was never like shoulder to cry on with him.
No, but was he ever like, hey, you suck tonight, you got to get better, but relax? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Okay.
But he just had this demeanor where even when he said that, it was just like,
yeah, he was like,
you still feel the pressure
Yeah.
because he's
one of those guys, if you got
him.
around today, you'd probably still be nervous. You'd be like...
I saw him this past year, and we were at a charity event, and I still was like, do I have the right socks on? Because he would find you if you didn't have the team-issued socks, or if you cut your shirt the wrong way, he finds you.
Old school.
Yeah,
I heard
crazy.
he was notorious for his note. He would walk around with the notebook, right?
And his time. The clock was always 5 minute fast. It was always 5 minutes fast.
Yeah, that's cool.
So every clock in the facility. So your clocks had to be right on your on your phones. And I missed a meeting one time. I had went out the night before and I fell asleep and my phone was under my stomach and it never went off. And I had a assistant strength coach come and get me and said, hey, Coach Coughlin came and sent me to get you. And I'm like, oh my God. And they should have benched me. It was my rookie year. And he didn't. They started me against Seattle, which is the year that Seattle won the Super Bowl. Pete Carroll had that amazing defense. And he blamed me for the entire loss, like in front of the team, because I slept through a meeting that Saturday morning.
You know, hey, look, it's either going to break you or it's going to make you better, and it sounds like it made you better. When did you feel, or when did your play represent this feeling that you're like, okay, I think I got the NFL figured out. I'm going to be okay?
So after that second year, it was survival mode throughout that whole year, working mentally through, can I play in the NFL? And I started working with a success coach.
Well, forgive me for not letting you answer the question. I want to get to it. You just said something mentally, like, were you pretty down on yourself?
Oh, yeah. Dark spot. I didn't go out. I didn't leave the house.
How you know, you talk, it sounds like just in the time we've been talking, I very much can tell you're incredibly tight relationships with your friend group. Were they still living with you?
They were still living with me. And they're Eagles fans. So imagine letting up 4 sacks and coming home and your buddies are kind of happy that you did because their favorite team
That's
just
not
won.
good.
Like my buddy has Eagle tattoo on his chest. That's how dedicated
So he's
these
hardcore.
guys are. Yeah.
But would they describe you in this as like, if I were to be having a beer with him right now, would you say was he like borderline depressed? Like what do you
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
I wasn't leaving the house. I was, super introverted. I didn't want to go out because I was embarrassed.
Yeah, because you thought people would say something.
And I would always get stopped when I would go out because you're a New York Giant in New York City. So like that was what I loved the most about it. Like I would get to go out and be that guy. And now it was like if I went out, people were like, why are you out? Why are you having dinner in public? You should be watching film. Do you see what you just did last weekend? Like what do you? And I got in a bad place. So I delete all social media. And I started meeting. My agent got me a success coach, and I met with this woman. Her name's Beth.
Success coach. This is someone who helps dive into the psychology of finding success.
Really, she works with CEOs. That was her main gig, and it was called the Handel Group. And she kind of walked me through like, hey, we're gonna look at these your life is like a 18-lane highway, and your social, your the wealth component, your family, your all these different components in your life. We have to start clearing these roadblocks. And you have like the chicken and the I forget what the other one was at the time, but like the good and the bad, one that scares you and tells you don't do it, and the one that like gives you confidence. Like you have to feed that one. And we worked through that. And I remember that year in the huddle, I'm like, stop, you're not going to give up a sack this play. I know it's 3rd and 15 and you got to block Clay Matthews. Like you got this. Like I had to pump myself up in the huddle. And that's something that I've struggled with throughout my entire career. I think almost every guy, offensive lineman in particular, do, because our job isn't just to catch a football or make a tackle. Someone's livelihood, someone's career, someone's health relies on me doing my job well.
Yeah. And this made a big positive change in you, this coach?
Changed the way I train, changed the way I live. It set me onto the path where like I'm either going to be in the NFL or I'm going to be a bust. And that offseason, I moved out to California. I trained with this guy, Jay Glazer, at this gym called Unbreakable. Yeah. And we started doing MMA fighting.
I was going to say, he's a big MMA guy. Clay did that, and he's like, man, you get so tired,
And the mentality, the fighter's mentality is what I took from that. And it reignited that way I used to play.
Think about those guys walking to the octagon. I was literally talking to someone about this yesterday. I said, admittedly, I don't watch a lot of football. I like when it's on, I'll probably watch the Super Bowl. I've watched a lot of football, right? But I love watching mixed martial arts, and the fighting component is super interesting, but it's really the psychology. Like these guys, they walk into a cage where they close it, and it's them and another. We talk about wrestling, but like with fighting, and it's incredible mentally how they're able to get themselves to do that, and it's a tremendous admiration. And so it sounds like it was a mental thing that really, like, the switch went off in you.
Yeah, and when you go out there, you're training with guys like your brother. You're training with Chuck Liddell, who comes in, Randy Couture, and you're like, I remember Randy Couture telling us this story. I guess he was fighting Chuck, or vice versa. They were fighting each other. They had some wars back in the day. And I remember they were telling us, like, when I would look across the cage and I would see anything, him drop his head, him get up off the stool a tick too soon, I knew I had him. I just had to break him now. And I took that to the NFL. It was like, I'm going to take this into the deep water and see how bad you want it. I don't care about technique. I don't care about looking pretty. I don't care what the Twitter has to say. It's like me and you locked in the octagon. And it's funny because I ran away from wrestling early on. It's that mentality is kind of what saved my career.
Interesting. So the reason I chose dark blue for Matthews, the company's color, is deep water. The concept of, like, you're going to drag your opponent out to deep water and you're just going to drown them. You're going to exhaust them. No, it's great. I love it. So year 3, it clicked. Year 4,
I moved to left guard.
Moved to left guard.
So they were like, hey, maybe, pulling in space and being in the zone read concept. Ben McAdoo came in from Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, sure.
And he takes over the offense, and that's when my career really started to take off.
Now, let me accelerate this. So year 4, you had a good year?
Year 4, I was probably one of the best, if not the best, guards in the NFL.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because most of the time they're going to want to re-sign you, but you ended up going to the Cardinals. Now, is that because after year 3 they just didn't know yet? And
so year 3 was learning to play inside a guard, different position. It's a car crash. You're pulling, a lot of different things. Play well. Year 4, I had my best season, and I had I got knocked out for like 3 or 4 games with a knee injury. So instead of signing me to a new contract, they exercised my 5th-year option.
That's right.
So as a first-round pick, there's a team option for the 5th year. So they picked up that option.
And the option is like the combination of the top 5.
Yeah. So I got $9 million that next year. So I got a big deal in that next year. So I was kind of fine with it. It's like, hey, the market's going to get even better. I'm going to take this 5th-year option. I'm going to go play even better, and I'm going to sign the biggest contract. Did you have a good 5th year? So I played into the 5th year, and that's when I got injured. 8 weeks into the season, have a back injury. I moved positions. So I always was, the reason the Giants drafted me, I was like this Swiss Army knife. I had played left tackle in college, played right tackle, could play left guard. If I had to go to center, I could play center in a pinch. So we're playing Von Miller on Sunday Night Football, and that week,
it was the Broncos.
McAdoo comes to me, and we're bad. Like, we had just gone to the playoffs. We lost to the Packers in the playoffs that year. It was the infamous boat game with Odell Beckham and some of those guys. And they went on a boat, and then you got Rodgers had a Hail Mary at halftime, all these different things.
That's right.
And going into that offseason, I'm like, we just played the playoffs. I played my best season. The Giants were like, hey, we'll offer you a long-term deal, but you got to give us a hometown discount. Or I could play on this $8.8 million tag, make that, and then hit the bank next year. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, all right, I've already made 8. I'm about to make another 8. I'd rather bet on myself.
Sure.
And so we go into that next season. Eli ends up getting benched throughout that year for Geno Smith. It was like a complete shit show. Ben McAdoo gets fired. The GM gets fired. And I get hurt. And
how'd you get hurt?
Playing against. So I changed positions. So that week, with one practice, the Giants were like, hey, we're playing Von Miller. Our right tackle is struggling. We need you to go play right tackle this week instead of left guard. So I get one practice at right tackle, slide out to right, one practice at right tackle, slide out there, play against Von Miller. We win the game. It's our first win of the season. Sunday Night Football, I get the Sunday night player of the game. So I'm talking to Mike Tirico after the game. They give me a ball. Like, I have like this picture that my wife got it like a little painting. It's in my office, and I'm like holding up the ball like Sunday Night Football, like the highest high of my career.
Yeah, especially offensive lineman, you don't get those. So I
go into the locker room, like McAdoo's hugging me. All the coaches are like. Because coaches remember, they're trying to cover their ass. Like, they don't want to get fired. And so all the coaches are like, we thank you for doing this. And I remember, like, my back was locking up in the 4th quarter. I ended up having, like, a herniated disc. Season's over. And the GM gets fired. Head coach gets fired. Dave Gettleman comes in from the Panthers.
Did you have to have surgery? Or
no surgery.
Yeah,
I went to Watkins out in California.
Yeah, I was going to say, generally, you do not want – I herniated my disc my senior year, and they're just like, look, it sucks, but you don't want to have surgeries on these.
Yeah, I did, like, intensive strength program. So new GM comes in, he goes, hey, I don't want 300-pound offensive linemen. I want 330-pound offensive lineman. You're not the guy for us. We're about to draft Saquon Barkley in the first round. I'm going to put these huge hog mollies, is what he called them, up front. And they went a different direction. So my agent and I are like, all right, let's go to the highest bidder in free agency. And this is where the business of football started to kick in. This is when my love for real estate started to kick in, because I thought like, oh, I'm on scholarship with the New York Giants. They're just going to keep giving me money. I'm like I'm once a Giant, always a Giant. Like I bought into it. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. And when they told me they didn't want me and I had to hit the market, and then when I hit the market, apparently there was rumors out there that my back was worse than it was, and where that came from, we still don't know who started those rumors. And teams weren't offering me what I thought. A guy that I thought I was better than got $12 million a year. And I'm like, all right, well, then I should get 13 a year. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I still signed a great deal with the Cardinals. My coach was right. I had to go to a bad team and sign a big deal. I signed a 5-year, $45 million contract with the Arizona Cardinals. And that was it. I mean, that was pick up everything and move to Arizona. I had met my wife that last year when I was hurt in New York. And she decided. We met through a mutual friend. I say blind date, but it wasn't blind with social media.
It's hard. I've seen it firsthand. It's hard when you get to the league and you're a celebrity, you're a profile, and you have a lot of money. You know, in the NFL, it's all men, right?
You can Google how much.
You can Google, yeah. That's wild that you can do that, but whatever. You know, it's all men in the league, so women, you never know what the intentions are, right? So meeting someone through a mutual friend or relationship, it really, I don't want to say it becomes the only way, but it really is the way.
Someone, she was vetted for me almost.
There you go, pre-qualified.
Hey, look, this is a good human being.
Pre-qualified. You called the references on the resume.
Exactly.
No, that's great. And so at that point, you say, hey, I'm going to Arizona. Was that a conversation?
So I moved out to Arizona at first, did the OTAs out here, and now we're over a year and a half seeing each other, almost a year. And I'm like, look, we've realized this long distance isn't going to work. Would you move out here? And she did it. Like, to her credit, like, you know when you find that right person, and I knew she was the one. Like, you're at a year and a half, you're already talking about getting married. Like, you have those intense conversations. And yeah, so she left her job in New York. She had a career in global merchandising, working for Calvin Klein. And she came out here and started working for a boutique out here and doing the same thing, fashion. But
does she dress you?
She's my rock. No, she'll tell me it looks stupid. If we do like a photo shoot with a baby, yeah, like she'll be like, don't wear black and blue, or don't do this.
So you're Cardinals. I'm gonna kind of,
yeah.
You're there for how many years?
5.
So you played all 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was a good experience.
Took some pay cuts towards the end there, and again, that starts to, and I guess this is where business enters the chat. My last year with the New York Giants, I moved down to Florida, get residency in Florida. I thought I'm going to go back to New York, but then Gettleman, the GM, told me no. And I got residency. And in the NFL, if your signing bonus is it is taxed in your state of residence. So you have to get some default language taken out of your contract, and you can get that signing bonus. And I was looking at a 5-year, $45 million contract, $10 million signing bonus. Real money we're talking about here. So I moved down to Florida, get the residency. I had a place there, spent all the time there, did all my duty days, and don't end up going back to New York, end up going to Arizona, who has even more stringent residency rules because so many folks from California would try to get residency here. So it was a perfect storm. I was able to save on my signing bonus, save that tax money. And during that time, I got invited to this thing called Pro Athlete Combine. Director of Player Engagement from Miami Dolphins started it. And he invited one guy from every team that had some business savvy. And he heard about what I did with this whole tax thing. And he's like, all right, come on down and see what all these things are about. So we had like the CEO of Rock Nation. We had Jesse Itzler and his wife she started Spanx, and he started like one of the NetJet companies. They now own the Atlanta Hawks. We had like a bunch of entrepreneurs. We had Airbnb folks, and then he had some commercial real estate guys come, and brokers, and he had developers get up and speak. And the developers start talking, and then all of a sudden he quiets his voice, and he's like, well, with depreciation and how we do it effectively,
what does that?
We don't pay, you know, our bills, or our tax bill is very low.
It's blended low.
And I raised my hand. I'm like, can you repeat the whole tax situation one more time? And he's like, quietly, you know, so we, you know, effectively, I didn't pay any taxes last year. I said, how did I just moved to Florida? I jumped through hoops.
Cost segregation, accelerated depreciation.
And at that point, a light bulb went off like, this is for me. I thought I was going to be in wealth management and help guys manage their money. And I said, there's no better way to help guys manage their money and to help them keep more of it. And I was trying at that point to look for a strategy to offset my NFL W-2 income. I was trying to make my wife a real estate professional and get married, and my wife be a real estate professional, get the depreciation. I was trying to like buy losses from people and do a joint company, like everything legal. I'm not trying to go to jail here.
No. Yeah.
But I was trying, and it was very difficult to make it happen. Never
do you
could
remember,
make it work.
was it the 2016 election? It was Clinton and Trump. And she was talking about his tax returns, like a page of it got leaked. And it's like, he only paid, I don't want to say either it got leaked but she's like, he only paid this much in taxes. He didn't pay any taxes. He goes, yeah, because I'm not dumb.
Yes.
He's like, I don't write the codes, right?
I play by the rules.
But these are the rules. I'd be an idiot not to take advantage of them. And I always.
And he said something about her supporters. He's like, ask all of your donors.
I know. I was going to say that's why real estate tax is being so beneficial. I'm pretty comfortable they'll be that way because both Democrats and Republicans own real estate. So that's great. But this is kind of how your love of real estate came about.
Yeah. So he would let me come out and look at some of his properties, and I got to go into their office and shadow for a few days. And as that progressed, I just, continued. I knew that that's what I wanted to do.
That's cool. And so, look, more is always better, respectfully, when it comes to wealth. But if I may, you've made a lot of money, right? And, we'll see if you got some miles, gas left in the tank for the NFL. You may get a call here any day. You never know. Obviously, well, actually, let me touch on that. So you play your 5 years in Phoenix. You had your 4 years in
5. So I did 5 and 5.
That's right, because they did the opposite. So you're 10 years. That's a long career, right? Average career is like 3, and you've made a lot of money. And you touched on it earlier. You and your wife, you're like, let's start a family. You weren't thinking. So you're sitting there this past fall, metaphorically sitting on the couch, right?
Sitting on the couch.
And what happens? You get a phone call?
Yeah, I got a phone call. So the New York Giants were out playing the Arizona Cardinals in Phoenix, and the Giants had some injuries to the offensive line during that game. They're staying the week in Arizona at Arizona State, 15 minutes from my house, to play the 49ers the following weekend. They have these injuries, and they're like, we need a left guard. Who's sitting on the couch right down the street? This guy. So I get in my car, I go work out for the Giants. They go play San Francisco.
Were you in shape? Or
I was in shape. I was, because the Eagles had called.
Okay, so
some other teams had called to see if I wanted to go on a run.
Because again, offensive linemen tend to go one of two ways. They stop playing and get super fat, or they actually get really thin. And it depends on body type and all that.
I got down to 258.
Okay.
I was skinny. I was walking around Italy, drinking the wine, eating the pizza, having a good time, and some teams started calling, so I started working out. But I was still, when the Giants called me, I was not anywhere near being ready to play an NFL game. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I'm starting on Sunday Night Football at left tackle, which I hadn't played in 10 years.
So what the hell? How does that happen? Like,
they had so many injuries. I go into the game like, hey, we need you to go out there and play. So I start at left guard thinking, I've done this. It's like riding a bike. Left tackle goes down. I look over at the coach, and he looks at me and goes, Pugh, left tackle. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I pregame had said, when you do your intro to Sunday Night Football.
I was going to say one of the, for those listening, some of you may know this already, is it was your Sunday Night Football intro. They say, Kyle Matthews, safety, USC or whatever. And normally you would say Justin Pugh, left guard, left tackle, Syracuse. And what'd you say? You said straight off the couch.
I said Justin Pugh straight off the couch, because that really is where I was sitting when I got the call. And, that moment had a little viral moment on the internet. My wife called me, told me that happened. But when I slide out to left tackle and they play that clip, all eyes are on me. I don't know the offense. I don't know the playbook. I don't know the cadence. We're playing the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. You can't hear a thing. We're in silent cadence. And for those that don't know what silent cadence is, the Green Bay Packers offensive line and Mike Solari actually perfected this technique playing in Seattle in the playoff all those years, where the center lowers his head, and as soon as the center raises his head, he snaps the ball. So when you can't hear anybody, the tackles look in and they look at the center's head, and as soon as it comes up, the tackle's set.
Yeah. And they do a dramatic snap.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's all timing. So you have to really know the center you're going with. I had never seen the center silent cadence before. When you're at guard, you can see it much easier, right out of the peripheral of your eye. It's a lot easier. So you can be a tick slower at guard. Tackle, you got to block Von Miller yet again, back again.
Yeah.
And The first 2 plays I jump off sides. The next 2 plays I let up a sack on both of them. And I'm sitting here like, here we go again. This is my Philadelphia Eagles year 2. Ugh. I'm right back in it. I end up settling in. I actually ended up grading out the best of any offensive lineman on the team that game. And the fan base absolutely went nuts over the straight off the couch thing. And like, it was, I'll never forget that game. We should have won. There was a pass interference not called at the end. Like, we drove down to win the game and just missed it. But at that point, the fans were on my side, and I went back to the Giants GM and I said, hey, I'm not playing for the vet minimum anymore. You're going to sign me to a real contract, and kind of forced his hand to sign me to a real deal after that.
That's great. Yeah. And so what does this next year look like for you?
You know, continuing with the real estate, and we can go back and kind of talk about how I got into like development and things like that. But I'm going to continue in the real estate world. I've dipped my toe into the water of podcasting, and I had recently signed with a broadcasting agent to get into that space. Did Media Row, the Super Bowl yesterday. That was a blast. So it's raising my daughter. She's obviously only 2 weeks old right now, but being a present at-home father, getting my body right. If the right team calls with the right offer, I'll go play. Because I saw a Hall of Fame off the field player in Larry Fitzgerald and how he handled himself.
Yeah.
Flying next to a logo like the NFL and then the New York Giants, and being a minnow with those 2 whales and sharks, those scraps are pretty good. So going back to play for the New York Giants was a calculated move on my part to get back into the New York market, because if you're going to do real estate, what's a better place to have a little name and a little cachet than New York City?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the guy I play with, Ryan Khalil, I remember we were in Manhattan Beach when I was living out in LA, and I saw him at dinner and we were chatting, and he was pretty much done. And he's like, hey, I want to get your thoughts on something. He's like, I'm done. He looked great, lost a bunch of weight. And he goes, I just got a call from the Jets. And he's like, they've offered me a 1-year deal, fully guaranteed, like, don't quote me on this, like $10 million. He's like, I don't know. I was like, Ryan, are you insane?
Yeah.
I said, he's like, but my family's out here. I said, they'll be fine. I said, fly him out on the weekends to the games. It would be a great experience. It was like $10 million, New York City. He was already, I think, mentally decided to do it. He was probably just looking for some affirmation, but I was like, you'd be $10 million for six months of work. And it was already training camp. Maybe they had an injury.
He missed OTAs. He missed the bulk of training.
Yeah. So anyway, similar story. So talk to the audience about some of the real estate development you've done.
Yeah. So my 3rd year in Arizona, my wife and I bought a house initially, and we were like, all right, we have an acre. We would love 2 acres. So I find this piece of land through the team doctor of the Arizona Cardinals. He's like, hey, I found this 3-acre parcel. It was an old bed and breakfast. They were going to turn it into a halfway home, a drug rehabilitation center. The neighborhood threw a fit. It was commercially zoned, so the neighborhood pitched in $50,000 to have a zoning attorney come in, get it rezoned to residential, RE 35, I think it was at the time, which allows you to build like a house per acre. And you could take 2 acres, sell off an acre, and your basis would be super low. He was going to try to buy it, but he couldn't sell his house in time to buy it. So I swoop in, buy it for $2.1 million. The day I close, COVID hits, and California floods the Arizona market. Prices triple overnight. I have this dirt that's entitled for 3 single-family homes. Get plans drawn. I'm like, I'm going to build like a townhome community. I wanted to. There wasn't enough density to do that. So I started looking at all these possibilities to maximize the buildable square footage, end up selling the properties because COVID and unforeseen circumstances, and 1031ing into ground up multifamily development. So in doing that, I met a developer here in town called IDM Companies, Invest, Develop, Manage. They're out of the Pacific Northwest, been doing it for 30 years. He's a UCLA, Santa Barbara guy. You California guys know your real estate. And he goes, hey, why don't you, not only can you 1031 into these projects, you can also come see how the sausage is made. So for the last 3 years, I will train in the mornings to play in the NFL, and then I go into the office in the afternoons. And
That's great.
I call myself an intern because I'm not getting paid. I'm just, the knowledge is the payment.
You're getting paid
for me.
in knowledge, yeah.
Exactly. And I get to ride shotgun with the CEO and the CFO and really see how this business model works, and it's been amazing.
That's great. And I'll tie this into my next question. Is so many athletes. Obviously, I've been blessed to have connections into that space. Like they really. And they're doing better. It's so much better now than it was 20 years ago. Yeah. But like, take financial ownership of your life. Even even if you have a phenomenal wealth advisor, it allows you to speak the language. It allows you to ask questions. It allows you to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And you know, the wealth management business has gotten a lot better. You know, back in the day, you had some shady characters, and I'm sure there's still some out there, but it's better. But so many athletes, they make this generational money, right? You know, what, 60, 70 million of gross contract earnings. Obviously, you know, there's incentives, you don't hit all that, but it's a generational money that you've made. And so many athletes, when their playing days are over, if your playing days are over, time will tell, but like it's coming, right? And they're just like, you know, they don't do anything. Or so many people, they're like, man, if I could make this money, or if I ever made that money, I'd be done. I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. Mm-hmm. So why are you not sitting on a beach? Why are you not chilling? How come you're interning for free at a development to learn? Like, what is it about you that why are you like that?
It's competition. It's the same thing. Like, I want to be, someone told me one time, they're like, you'll never make as much money as you made in the NFL anywhere else.
And that bothers you.
And that bothers me, because I don't think that football defines me. I think if I didn't play football at Syracuse, I was going to get my degree in finance, and I was going to figure out a way to get to exactly where I'm at right now. And when they tell me that, and then I look at the deal that I kind of tripped and fell into, and it was a land development deal, and I was able to make a few bucks doing that, I'm like, you're wrong. I don't got to go hit a rookie anymore, because that's the thing. When you get old in the NFL, it's not like you can't play football. It's you're not willing to sacrifice your body like the young guys are. The young guys don't. Well,
you start asking questions like, "Wait, what am I doing?"
Exactly.
Like, this can't be good for me.
Exactly, and that's kind of where we're at.
It look, if you do real estate right, and we're in Phoenix right now. We're gonna go to the Waste Management, have a beer. We could talk real estate, but you absolutely can and should be able to create more wealth in real estate over the next 20 years than you have over the last 10 in the NFL, and that's the beauty of the industry, right? Yeah. But
I figure I bring a few good pieces to the table. You're either bringing knowledge, money, connections. So I'm trying to bring two of the three. I'm trying to learn the third. I'm trying to bring capital, and I'm trying to bring connections. And then I'm trying to learn that expertise where maybe if I don't, I know who to hire and I know who to partner with on jobs.
That's the beauty of real estate. It seems very complicated at first, but it isn't. It isn't. It's real estate is meant for everyone to be successful in it. Not everyone is, and there's reasons for that: risk and leverage and timing and all that. But you know, I look. One of the reasons I sit down with someone like yourself and I do this podcast is not just for you to tell your story, which is awesome, and the success you've had, and that's exciting for people to hear and listen to, and the money you made is great. But what drives someone to do what they've done or continue to do what they're in the process of doing, especially someone like yourself who, respectfully, it may seem normal to you because, you know, for the last 10 years you've been around men who look like you, the same age, who make money like you, but it's not normal to make $50 million by the time you're 35 years old, or however you're younger than that, 32, 33 years old.
Yeah.
And most people tell themselves, there's moments I've told myself like, oh, it's one day when there's this, when you have X amount of money, I'm just going to chill. And a lot of people do. And I just, I respectfully just kept going. And me looking within myself, like, well, why do I just keep, it's almost like resetting the goalpost. Like, okay, why are you now resetting the goalpost? Why aren't you just a guy who's, you're going to be stay-at-home dad and you'll still spend a lot of time with your daughter. That's one of the benefits of real estate, especially when you're the developer, you kind of get to make your own schedule. And it sounds like competition, yeah?
Competition's it, and then you peek across the fence, you see what's over there, and I don't think it's a good thing that keeping up with the Joneses. In the locker room, I see it happen all the time, where you have a practice squad guy sitting next to an Eli Manning, and he tries to live the same way, and that's how a lot of guys end up going broke. But there's a certain lifestyle that I want to live, and I want to have my kids living that.
Well, if he lived like Eli, he wouldn't go broke, because if you look at how Eli dresses, like he ain't spent any money on clothes. I know that.
Exactly, but exactly. There's other guys that spend money. You know what I mean? But all of a sudden you're working.
The DBs and receivers.
I'm working for a developer, and I see the life he's living, and I was like, wow. Imagine if I could own my own plane one day. Imagine if I could just get on a plane and go see my family in Philadelphia whenever I wanted, or I could have the apartment in New York City and have a place in Florida. And the purpose and something to wake up to do every day and to compete against other people and compete against myself. If I just sat at home all day and worked out and played 9 holes of golf and came back and made dinner, I feel like I'm letting my family down. Like I have this premium rocket fuel in me for whatever reason. It's just family.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Was it always like this? Was this something that turned on, or were you just always, kind of manically committed to doing something and going full speed?
We have one shot at life, and I just feel like I want to have these experiences. I want to provide these things for my family that I've already been able to change my life and be able to help my family and do a lot of great things. But it's like, what's next? What's driving you? Why do you wake up in the morning to do what you do? And for me, I couldn't look myself in the mirror if I didn't get myself healthy. That's the primary goal for me right now, is getting my money in order. And the next one is setting my family up to change everyone's life, not just my own and my wife's, my daughter's daughter, and change that trajectory where we don't have to, my daughter doesn't have to go play football and trade her health for money, or
it's probably good for
son, you know what I mean? Maybe she doesn't go, she can do whatever she wants to do. So I feel like I'm going to leave my family in a much better place than I was given. And my parents left me in a better place. And that's, I think, the job of a parent is to set your child up for more success than you had.
Yeah. It's certainly a driver for a lot of people. I know that's for myself. I will say one thing. I have 4 kids between 2 to 13. Is in the process of trying to provide them everything guys like you and I tell us we didn't have, you might rob them of the one thing that maybe we did have, which is adversity. So keep an eye.
That is definitely something that I have to keep in mind. My wife brings it up to me all the time. She's like, hey, you have to make sure they struggle a little bit. They have to feel that. So I'll be texting you for tips on how to create adversity.
Wrestling.
There we go. Exactly.
Man, watching my son compete in wrestling, and look, he wins some matches, but it's new to him, and he goes out there, and he's kind of a bigger kid, but he's not. So he's going against guys who are older, who've gone through puberty, but they weigh the same, and it still hasn't happened for. And there's some matches where he gets beat, and it's hard, and watching your kid fail, especially at something like that. Like, I want to go out there, I want to punch the kid. Yeah. Then the dad, I'm going to go to a dark place right now. The dad standing over there's some slob with a beer gut, like, yeah, son, yeah. And I'm like, I will ruin your day right now. Like, you're talking shit. Like, and sometimes I'll do this, and then it's a bad scene because I get really fired up. But I know it's good for him. I know it's great for him, and I've been so blessed. You've been so blessed, in our careers. And so there's just so much that your daughter's going to have that you didn't. Not that you or I, we're both, had great childhoods. Yeah. But so you almost, I call it manufactured adversity. You have to manufacture this adversity. You have to invent it. I
love that. I love that. I mean, I'm definitely going to take that and run. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is I love people. I love doing what we're doing right now and hearing about where people came from and how they got there. And I feel like real estate, you talk to people from all walks of life. And that's what football, it took me out of my comfort zone, the suburbs of Philadelphia, and put me into an environment where I'm playing with a guy that was displaced by Katrina and had to live in a car during high school. And to see where those guys, the next passion is to be able to teach guys and be able to help solve for this cash flow problem, because we talk about the money and how great it is and how guys in the locker room make so much. It's some crazy statistic, like 60% of guys go broke
within 5 years.
And that is something that has to change.
Sad.
So
it's very sad. I tell you, look, financial literacy is a big thing. And if you can help not just your current, your past, future, or past teammates, but future players, like, you're doing a phenomenal service. Because again, a lot of them are coming from backgrounds that it's just their financial literacy. That, they don't have uncles who are wealth managers and all that. And you and I have had the same teammates, so you know what we're talking about. And the other challenge, again, this is a longer conversation for another day. Is one of the biggest financial drains are the friends and family. That
the entourage that I had when I got to New York.
But the Johnny drama. Did you have a Johnny drama?
100% I had it. I had the turtle. I had it all. But this is the issue. It's not their fault either. If I told my buddies, hey, we're going to go to the club tonight and I'm going to get bottle service, and it's going to cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, they can't afford that. So if I want my friends to come and enjoy what I'm doing,
100%,
I'm paying for it.
Agreed.
Hey, you want to go on vacation? I'm getting us into the Four Seasons. And my mom and those people, hey, we want to get it. We've never had a shore house. We're buying the shore house.
Yeah.
So it's so many good intentions that end up piling up the bills, and you don't even realize. And that's what I want to break.
Combined
that stigma.
with, some of my teammates when they went to the league and I saw it, it was kind of like, well, when you make it, we all make it. And it's like, so you hope that there's
both exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a combination of that. Absolutely. But yeah, certainly if you can move the needle with one player, like you've done a good deed. Cause and again, I think it's getting better, but there's so much more to go. I'll wrap this up. Is in looking back at your playing career as it's, you have this real estate career, which is just getting going, but in just looking back at your playing career, what would be a word that would describe the mentality you played or approached your profession while you were in the NFL?
That's a good question. Maybe not a word, but like an animal.
Yeah.
I was a gnat. I was annoying. It wasn't fun going against me. You might hit me and knock me down and take me out, but that fly you can't catch and it just keeps biting you and it's like death by 1,000 cuts. That's how I played football. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the strongest. Wasn't the smartest. But I knew that I was going to take you into the deep waters. Yeah, and we were going to figure out who wanted it more.
And you know what? That mentality, that description, in my experience, in the more professional setting, not the NFL, is the single biggest determinant of success, at least in my business, in commercial real estate, specifically brokerage. I'm here in Phoenix, and I did a speech yesterday, and there were about 50 agents, and the young guy says, hey, what's the common trait in the most successful people you've ever seen in this industry? And I said, it's like the mental fortitude to never stop moving forward, no matter how long it takes for you to get your first deal or to make your first sales award or to, reach whatever your milestones are. I said, people get demoralized, they enter the valley of despair, and most give up. And they're just like, this is too hard. I'm going to go do something different. And I said, the most successful people, they have this like look in their eyes that they're all different shapes and sizes and genders and height and weight and education and background. So there's no commonality there, but they all have this mentality of like, I will never stop coming after you and or coming for you. And it breaks their competition.
Because most people don't want to fight. Most people, it's the same mentality that I ran away from as a young child. It's like you put two of us in a ring or a circle on the mat, and you're told to run. And those that can push through and are comfortable in the uncomfortable are successful.
Well, Justin, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's raining outside. I don't know what. And
we're about to go over to the golf tournament. Luckily, there's some overhang coverage.
Yeah, we'll be at the Skybox. We'll be all right. This is awesome, and I look forward to maybe seeing you play again. I don't know. We'll see, but definitely crossing paths with you in commercial real estate. But the audience will love this. It's a great story, but also there's a lot you can take from how you approached your career, how you're approaching your real estate career is just an animal.
No, I look forward to it. And obviously how we found each other on real estate Twitter, I mean, it was amazing. You do a great job of really breaking things down and showing people that you can have success.
Who connected? Was it a strip mall guy?
It might have been.
Don?
Don?
He's public now.
He's public now.
Yeah.
I think it was him actually. 100% was Don.
Well, he's in New York. Yeah, he's a New York guy.
He's a great guy, but what you're doing and the foundation that you've set is a shining example. And it's a part of me always wishes I started on the brokerage side because that's really get an understanding of all the, maybe I still will. I'm not fully into development full time.
I'm biased. Like there is no better path in real estate than brokerage. I mean, if you're on the development side, you're going to look at 5 to 10 deals a year in brokerage. You look at 100, 150, 200 deals yourself that you underwrite. You present the value to an owner. You walk them through the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats to the asset. The problem is you work 80 to 100 hours a week, and you don't make money for your first 12 months. And so that's always, that's a filter certainly up front. But if you can figure out a way to survive that first month or the first year or two in brokerage, like it's such a blessing to be in. And then so many brokers, some stay and become $5-10 million guys. They earn NFL money. Some, they go in to be developers. They get in principals. It leads them to other paths, but brokerage is a fantastic career. I will say, for you might have already put yourself in a position from a wealth side that it might, being a principal might be there. But again, we could talk about that later today.
Exactly.
And again, thanks for coming on. This was great.
Thanks for having me on.
Always ends the same when it was me and